Warning! Kinda Murdery contains adult themes, explicit language, and descriptions of violence. It is not suitable for anyone, and we recommend you stop listening now.
I'm Zevin Odelberg, and this is Kinda Murdery. I'm back from my summer vacation and thrilled to be reunited with all of you. And by way of greeting, I'd like to say simply this.
Here's Johnny!
Many of you probably recognize that terrifying greeting as Jack Nicholson from Stanley Kubrick's seminal horror movie, The Shining. Now, if you've never seen The Shining and you're at home right now, stop listening to this podcast this minute and start watching The Shining. And if you've never seen The Shining but you plan to keep listening to Kinda Murdery right now, then this is your spoiler alert. There are Shining spoilers ahead. Okay, if you, like me, love The Shining, you probably know that the movie name for the remote winter lodge in The Shining is the Overlook Hotel. And you're probably aware that the Overlook Hotel is haunted. And it's not benignly haunted, oh no. The Overlook is full of scheming, ravenous ghosts who want to steal and eat your soul and maybe get you to commit some murders while they're at it. Now, obviously, the Overlook Hotel is a fictional hotel from a fictional movie based on a fictional book by Stephen King. But if The Shining proves anything, it's that fictional can still be very scary. But I think we all know what's scarier than fictional haunting and fictional suicide and fictional murder. That's right, true crime is scarier. I'm talking about real haunting, real suicide, and real murder. And today, I'm going to tell you the true story of a real hotel in downtown Los Angeles. A real building that still stands. And it's no tantalizing over-exaggeration to say that this hotel could accurately be described as LA's real-life Overlook. Several articles were instrumental to putting this episode together, especially a 2023 article from allthat'sinteresting.com by Katie Serena, and another written in 2019 for discovery.com by Ruben Westmass. As always, all my sources are in the show notes. And now, if you're ready, please join me as we uncover what truths we can and solve what mysteries we may. Kinda Murderies, the Cecil Hotel, starts now. Nestled within the busy streets of downtown Los Angeles lies one of the most infamous buildings in horror lore, the Cecil Hotel. You may remember it as a stopover for Frank Lindsay, the fry cook killer, from my last episode with Anson Maddox. Since it was built in 1924, the Cecil Hotel has been plagued by unfortunate and mysterious circumstances that have given it perhaps an unparalleled reputation for the macabre. At least 16 different murders, suicides, and unexplained paranormal events have taken place at the hotel. And it's even served as the temporary home of some of America's most notorious serial killers. The Cecil Hotel was built in 1924 by William Banks Hanner. It was supposed to be a destination hotel for international businessmen and social elites. Hanner spent $1 million on the 700-room Beaux Arts-style hotel, complete with a marble lobby, stained glass windows, palm trees, and an opulent staircase. If you, like me, are all too aware of inflation these days, you might be curious to know that $1 million in 1924 is approximately $18 million today. William Banks Hanner would come to regret his investment. Just 2 years after the Cecil Hotel opened, the world was thrown into the Great Depression, and Los Angeles was not immune to economic collapse. Soon enough, the area surrounding the Cecil Hotel would be dubbed Skid Row and become home to thousands of homeless people. I actually lived in a loft right above Los Angeles' Skid Row back in 2010, the Little Tokyo lofts, in fact. And I'll never forget one almost nightly occurrence. Sometime after midnight on most nights of the week, you could suddenly hear a rolling, chittering, clattering sound. And if you looked out the window, you would see a living, undulating carpet of cockroaches moving down 4th Street, like a chitinous army from hell. But back to the Cecil. The once beautiful hotel soon gained a reputation as a meeting place for junkies, runaways, and criminals. Worse yet, the Cecil Hotel ultimately earned a reputation for violence and for death. In the 1930s alone, the Cecil Hotel was home to at least 6 reported suicides. A few residents ingested poison, while others shot themselves, slit their own throats, or jumped out of their bedroom windows. In 1934, for example, Army Sergeant Louis D. Borden slashed his throat with a razor. Less than 4 years later, Roy Thompson of the Marine Corps jumped from atop the Cecil Hotel and was found on the skylight of a neighboring building. The next few decades only saw more violent deaths. In September 1944, 19-year-old Dorothy Jean Purcell awoke in the middle of the night with stomach pains while she was staying at the Cecil with Ben Levine, 38. She went to the bathroom so as not to disturb a sleeping Levine and, to her complete shock, gave birth to a baby boy. Dorothy had no idea she'd been pregnant. Mistakenly thinking her newborn was dead, Purcell threw her live baby out the window and onto the roof of the building next door. The infant did not survive, and at her trial, Purcell was found not guilty of murder by reason of insanity and was admitted to a hospital for psychiatric treatment. In 1962, 65-year-old George Giannini was walking by the Cecil with his hands in his pockets when he was struck to death by a falling woman, Pauline Otten, 27, who had jumped from her 9th floor window after an argument with her estranged husband, Dewey. Pauline's fall killed both her and Giannini instantly. Police thought the two had committed suicide together at first, but reconsidered when they found Giannini was still wearing his shoes. You see, if he had jumped, his shoes would have fallen off mid-flight. In light of the suicides, mishaps, and murders, Angelenos promptly dubbed the Cecil the most haunted hotel in Los Angeles. While it's true that tragic calamities and suicide have contributed heavily to the hotel's body count, the Cecil Hotel has also served as a temporary home for some of the most famed and grisliest murderers in American history. Trust me, I'm glossing over a lot of awful stories as I skip forward from 1964 to 1984, 20 years, to a bloody time span of less than a year and a half between April 1984 and August 1985, when Richard Ramirez, better known as the Night Stalker, was the terror of coastal California and murdered no fewer than 38 people, ages 9 to 83, in a killing spree that spread all the way from Orange County to San Francisco. And when he was operating in Los Angeles, his base of operations was, yes, you guessed it, the Cecil Hotel. He even disposed of evidence, including bloody clothes, in the hotel's dumpster. After killing someone, he would throw his bloody clothes in the dumpster and saunter into the hotel lobby either completely naked or only in underwear. None of which would have raised an eyebrow, wrote journalist Josh Dean, since the Cecil in the 1980s was, quote, total, unmitigated chaos. At the time, Ramirez was able to stay there for a mere $14 a night, and with corpses of junkies reportedly often found in the alleys near the hotel and sometimes even in the hallways, Ramirez's blood-soaked lifestyle surely raised nary an eyebrow at the notorious Cecil. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, was ultimately convicted of 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, and 11 sexual assaults. But as I mentioned earlier, he's suspected of having committed at least 38 murders. Fast forward just a few years to 1991, an Austrian serial killer, Jack Unterweger, who strangled prostitutes with their own bras, also called the hotel home. Rumor has it he chose the hotel because of its connection to Richard Ramirez. The Night Stalker has pretty high name recognition, yeah, and his crimes were particularly heinous, but the story of Jack Unterweger has another particularly creepy wrinkle. An Austrian serial killer, he committed his first murder in his home country in 1974, and was convicted and sentenced for his crime. About 10 years later, he released a memoir entitled Purgatory or the Trip to Jail, Report of a Guilty Man. The memoir became a bestseller and helped convince officials he had reformed. Spoiler alert, he hadn't. Unterweger had fooled more than just the cops. His story was soon told as an example of the prison system's success, and eventually, he even began working as a journalist and public broadcasting host on the true crime beat. His specialty? The heinous murders of sex workers, just like the crime that had led to his conviction. In 1991, he checked into the Cecil to cover a story about street crime in Los Angeles. While he was in the city, 3 sex workers were attacked and killed in a way that mirrored Unterweger's crime, and police were able to definitively tie the journalist to the murders. Most disturbing of all was the fact that as police on both sides of the Atlantic began to more closely examine the case, they realized that Unterweger had also committed many of the very same murders that he had covered on the air. Jack Unterweger killed himself in prison shortly after his second conviction, tying the ligatures with the same distinctive knot that he used on all of his victims. While some of the episodes of violence in and around the Cecil are attributed to known serial killers, such as we just discussed, some murders have remained unsolved. To pick one of many, a local woman known around the area named Goldie Osgood was found dead in her ransacked room at the Cecil. She had been raped before suffering a fatal stabbing and beating. Though one suspect was found walking around with blood-stained clothing nearby, he was later cleared, and her killer was never convicted. It was just another instance of disturbing violence at the Cecil that had gone unresolved. Another grimly noteworthy guest of the hotel was Elizabeth Short, who came to be known as, and I'm sure some of you know this already, so go ahead and say it with me, Elizabeth Short, who came to be known as the Black Dahlia, after her 1947 murder in Los Angeles. The Black Dahlia had reportedly stayed at the hotel just before her mutilation, which remains unsolved. What connection her death may have to the Cecil is not known, but what is known is that she was found on a street not far away on the morning of January 15th, with her mouth carved ear to ear and her body cut in two. Such stories of violence are not simply a thing of the long past at the Cecil. Decades after Short, one of the most mysterious deaths ever to take place at the Cecil Hotel happened in 2013. In 2013, Canadian college student Elisa Lam was found dead inside the water tank on the roof of the hotel 3 weeks after she had gone missing. Her naked corpse was found after hotel guests had complained of bad water pressure and a funny taste to the water. Although authorities ruled her death as an accidental drowning, critics believed otherwise. Before her death, surveillance cameras caught Lam acting strangely in an elevator, at times appearing to yell at someone out of view, as well as apparently attempting to hide from someone, while pressing multiple elevator buttons and waving her arms erratically. After the video surfaced publicly, many people began to believe that the rumors of the hotel being haunted might be true. Horror aficionados began drawing parallels between the Black Dahlia murder and Lam's disappearance, pointing out that both women were in their 20s, traveling alone from LA to San Diego, last seen at the Cecil Hotel, and were missing for several days before their bodies were found. I'm not suggesting that you do, but if you'd like to watch the deeply disturbing video of Elisa Lam in the elevator, check the show notes for this episode. The last body was found at the Cecil Hotel in 2015, a man who reportedly took his own life. And when his body was found, the ghost stories and rumors of the hotel's haunting swirled once more. The Hotel Cecil even served as the chilling inspiration for a season of American Horror Story about a hotel that's home to unimaginable murder and mayhem. Before we move on to the latest chapter for the Cecil Hotel, and especially in light of the subject matter of this episode, I would like to take a moment to remind you, as I often do, of the free 3-digit lifeline number 988 that you can call anytime 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to receive free immediate professional counseling for substance use, mental health, or suicidal thoughts. So if you find yourself in a dark place, please do call 988. Program it into your phone now. Please do remember that you are loved and the world is a better place with you in it. Now, I am not qualified to help you if you find yourself in truly dire straits, but if you're just feeling down and you would like to connect with someone, or if you'd like to share your story of coping with a disability, or even a Kinda Murdery story that you hope can inspire an episode, please do feel free to reach out to me, kindamurdery@gmail.com, at kindamurdery on all social media, or you can call the Kinda Murdery hotline, 888-MURDERY. That's 888-687-3379. I'm here, I care, and I would love to connect with you. All right, back to the Cecil. The Hotel Cecil has developed a reputation for horror that defines its legacy to this day. In 2011, this of course would be prior to the deaths of Elisa Lam and the suicide victim that I just referred to, but in 2011, the Cecil attempted to shake off its macabre history by rebranding itself as Stay on Main Hotel and Hostel, a $75 per night budget hostel for tourists. Several years later, New York City developers signed a 99-year lease and began gut renovating the building to include an upscale boutique hotel and hundreds of fully furnished micro-units in keeping with the surging co-living craze. It's now in the midst of these $100 million renovations and will ultimately become $1,500 a month micro-apartments. Perhaps with enough renovations, the Cecil Hotel can finally shake its reputation for all things bloody and eerie, the reputation that has defined the ill-fated building for the better part of a century. But I gotta say, after hearing this episode, if you'd still like to rent an apartment at the Cecil Hotel, you're either a lot braver or a lot dumber than me. Or maybe neither. Maybe your reasons are your own, and somebody ought to tip off the FBI. I'm Zevin Odelberg, and this has been Kinda Murdery.